Hello everyone. Have you ever been on an online store and wondered how these product filters work? When you click on a category, color, or price range and the page magically updates with the relevant items. Well, the secret sauce behind that dynamic magic is often something called QueryParameters. Today we are diving into the world of QueryParameters in Angular. And trust me, this is a game changer for building interactive and user-friendly web applications. So what makes QueryParameters so cool? Well, the answer is that they let you create dynamic content based on what the user wants to see. They allow users to bookmark or share filtered views with others, and they are key ingredient in building powerful features like infinite scrolling with filtering. In this tutorial, we will start with the fundamentals of QueryParameters and then jump into some hands-on Angular code. We will build a simple app that fetches these parameters from the URL and uses them to customize the displayed content. By the end, you will be equipped to add this awesome functionality to your own Angular projects. Let's look at some basics for QueryParameter. QueryParameters are simply key value pairs that appear at the end of a URL after the question mark. They provide additional information to the web server or the application about the specific request being made. So let's break down an example. In this URL, category is the key and the electronics is the value. And then sort is the key and price is the value. These key value pairs are separated by AND operator. Angular's router is a powerful module that handles navigation within your application. It interprets the URL, matches to specific routes you have defined, and determines which component should be displayed. But the router does more than just navigation. It also gives you access to QueryParameters extracted from the URL. The activated route service is your gateway to the QueryParameters associated with the currently active route. It provides an observable called QueryParam map that you can subscribe to in your components. This observable emits the latest parameter values whenever they change, ensuring your component always has the most up-to-date information from the URL. Alright, let's dive into the code. We'll start with the simplest way to grab the QueryParameters in the Angular. Imagine we have a component that displays details about a product. The product ID might be passed in as a QueryParameter. So let me quickly show you an example. So let's suppose we have a product ID here and the type is string and the default value is empty. And we will inject a service. Route is equal to inject. Make sure to import the inject function, activated route. And now we will implement the ng on init. Make sure to import it as well. Okay, now I will access this dot product ID and give it the value from the this dot route dot snapshot dot query param map dot get and give it the name of the query string variable that you want to access. Okay, so it is saying that string or null is not assignable to type string. The null is not assignable to type string. We know that it will never be empty. It will never be null. So for that, I will add this symbol here that will remove this warning or error. Now you can use this product ID to fetch and display the product details. So let me quickly demonstrate that. So I have consoled the product ID. Now let's run the server. Okay, so let me open the inspect element and then we will pass the product ID from the URL. So here I will use product ID is equal to this. So currently when I open this page, it shows null. It was not able to access the product ID. So the reason might be that at this stage, the query string variable was not available to use. So we may have to add some timeout. I have put the logic within the timeout callback function and let's add some wait period. Now you can see that we got the product ID in the console. Now let's quickly talk about this code. So in this code, we have injected the activated route service into our component. Then inside the ng on init, which runs when the component is initialized, we also used the set timeout function to add some delay so that we could be able to access the product ID at that time. And here we use the this dot route dot snapshot dot query param map to get a snapshot of the parameters at that moment. And then we call the get function on the query param map to retrieve the value of the product ID parameter. There are some pros and cons of this approach, of this snapshot approach. So one of the first pros is that it's incredibly straightforward. You get the parameter value once and you are done. It's perfect for scenarios where the parameter isn't expected to change while the component is active. And the cons is that it is not reactive. If the URL changes, for example, the user clicks a different filter, this component won't automatically update. Now the question is when to use the snapshot approach. First use case is the static views. When you are only interested in the initial parameter values and they won't change during the component's lifetime. Secondly, one-time actions. When you need the parameter to trigger some logic once, like fetching data on the page load. Great. Now let's explore more powerful way to work with the query parameters in Angular, the observable approach. This method allows our components to react to changes in the URL's parameter in real time. This is super useful for scenarios like dynamic filtering, where the user's actions directly modify the query parameters. So let's see how this works in the code. I'm going to get rid of everything for now in the app component, and I will define a variable filtered products is equal to type. So this is going to be of type product with an array. By default, I will give it an empty array. We have to define the interface with the name product as well. Okay. Now I also have to create the ng on init function. Now let's inject the activated route service. Okay. Now in the ng on init, I will use this dot route dot query params param map dot subscribe, and we will pass it a callback function that will receive the parameters from the URL. And now here I will get the category from the query string variable from the URL. Category is equal to params dot get category, and also I need const sort by. Okay. Now here we can fetch the products based on the category and sort by to sort them. So this is just an example. Obviously this will not work until you use the real products, but this is just to give you the idea that how things will work in the real project. So let me just quickly console these values just to show you. Okay, now let's reload it, and here you can see we have null values because we did not pass anything yet. So here I am going to pass the category is equal to this, and we got the category here. So earlier the category was not available, but because of the subscription, whenever it detected the change in the query string variable, it was able to detect that, and it has run our logic. Now let's pass the sort by as well. Okay, we got the query string variable values for both. Okay, now in the HTML, I will add a button that will update the query string variables. So let's do that. And here I will add the router link, but in order to use that, I have to import the router module. Okay, now I am able to use it here. So use the router link, use the same path because we don't want to change the location. We want to stay on the same page, but we want to use the pass another directive query params, and here I will, as I want to use JavaScript syntax here, so that's why I will wrap it in the square brackets, and now here I will pass the object, and here we will pass the parameters that we want to update. Like I want to update the category, so pass the category this and sort by newest. Okay, so now you can see that currently in the console the category is 33 and sort by is price, but if I click on this button, then it will immediately change in the URL, and also the change was detected by the subscription of RxJS, and it immediately ran our logic, and because of that it printed the updated values in the console. So now let's quickly talk about the code that we have written here. Here we again injected the activated route service, and instead of using snapshot, we subscribe to the query param map observable. Whenever URL parameters change, the subscription callback is executed. Inside the callback, we extracted the parameter values we need and use them to update our component's logic. For example, fetch and filter products. Now let's talk about some pros and cons. The pros of observable approach are that it's reactive. Your component automatically updates when the URL changes. It's perfect for dynamic scenarios where the parameters might change frequently. And about the cons of the observable approach is that it involves subscribing to an observable, which can be a little more complex for beginners compared to the snapshot method. So now the question is that when to use the observable approach? Well, we can use it when we need dynamic filtering and sorting. So for example, when user interactions modify the query parameters and you want your component to reflect those changes in real time. Another use case is infinite scrolling, when you need to fetch more data as user scrolls and the parameters determine what data to fetch next. Alright, we have covered the essentials of getting query parameters. Now let's level up with some advanced techniques that will make you a query parameter pro. Now we will talk about handling optional parameters. Not all query parameters are mandatory. Sometimes they might be missing from the URL. So this is how to handle them gracefully. So for example, we are getting the category, but if category was not provided in the URL, we will give it a default value by adding the OR operator, and here I will pass the default value. Now, if I show you here, you will notice that the sort by variable has the null value, but for the category, we have the all text that is coming because of this default value. So we use the logical OR operator to provide a default value all if the category parameter isn't found. So now you don't even have to pass the category in the URL. So you can skip it as well. So you can see that it was all, and again on the change detection, it was still all because of the default value. Let's add some type safety to our parameters using TypeScript interface. So on the top, I will create an interface with the name product filter params, and here I will specify the parameters that we are expecting from the URL. And now instead of doing this, I can create a constant filter params, and the type would be product filter param that we just created. And now it will keep complaining about the missing parameters. So as both of these are optional, you can add question mark to them, then this error would be gone. But you are still able to get the suggestions. If you press Control space on your keyboard in Mac, then you will get the suggestions. So you can see we have the options for both of these query string parameters. So now I will get both of these params.get category, and I added the exclamatory sign here so that I could tell the TypeScript that we are sure that we're getting some value here. This would never be null. And similarly for the sort by. So we can add another property that we can expect from the URL like page. That would also be an optional. And here let's access the page as well, params.get page. So I am saying that if page is found in the URL, then get that page, and then I will, if nothing was provided, then I will use the default value. And here it is complaining about the possible null value. So there are two problems in this code the compiler is complaining about. Is that first of all, when you get some parameter from the URL, it is a string. So first of all, we have to convert it to the number. For that, if you just prefix it with the plus, then it will become the number like this. Okay, and now it is complaining that it is possibly null. To fix that problem, you can add this. Now below, you can use the filter params with the type safety. Let me alert the JSON.stringify for this, and you can see we got the null values, but for the page we got the default value. So you will notice that for the first time it will be triggered. At that time it did not access the values from the URL, and it was sort by was null. But when you click OK, then again this callback function was executed, and this time we got the value from the sort by. So here we define the interface product filter params to specify the types of our parameters. We then convert the values to correct types. For example, converting the page to number. Alright, let's put everything together and build a mini project, a product filter component powered by QueryParameters. This will be a fun and practical exercise to solidify your understanding. So let's create a new component called product filter component. Open the terminal and run the command nggenerate c product-filter present. Okay, now we need to import this product filter component in our app.component.ts. as we are using the standalone components, so we can simply import it in our imports array like this. And let me get rid of all of other code for now, this as well. Okay, now let's add some basic filter options in the product filter.component.html. So here I will add a div, then h3, then I will add select tag, and within select tag we need option tag, and we need 3 option tags, so I will multiply it with 3. Actually, before that I need to add an attribute as well to every option, so I will do that. Now multiply it with the number of the options that you want. I want 3 options, so I am multiplying it with 3, and here you can see the preview what it is going to generate. Okay, so just press enter and you got the entire layout for the HTML. And now let's add the content filter products, and then I need to add a name, selected category, and then we will add the text for the first option, all categories, and then we will add the category for the second option, electronic, and let's add the third category, clothing. Okay, now I need to use the ng model here, but before using ng model we have to import the forms module in our imports array. So here I will add ng. We have to use square bracket and round bracket and then add ng model and give it the variable that we will define in the component, selected category. Okay, now it's time to connect to the router. So go to the product.filter.component.ts, and here I will first inject the activated route, but before that let me define the selected category, and the type would be string, and then I will also give it a default value. And now I will implement the onInit lifecycle hook. Okay, and now I will add ng onInit function in it, and now we need to inject 2 services. First one is route, and we will inject with the help of the inject function that should be imported from the Angular/core, and within that I will pass the activated route. And similarly we need the router that will be coming from the router service. Make sure to import it from the Angular/router. Okay, so here we have imported both of these services. Now next let's implement the filtering logic. So we will add a method called apply filters to update the URL with the selected filter values. So let's define a function apply filters, then define a constant QueryParameters. Type would be any for now, and we will give it a default value, and we are checking if this dot selected category is true, then we will use the QueryParameters dot category is equal to this dot selected category. Okay, now after this if condition you can add other filter values to the QueryParameters as needed. Now at the end we will add this dot router dot navigate and pass it an empty array because we don't want to change the URL. We want to stay on the same route on which we are currently right now, and then we will pass a second parameter that would be an object. Within that we will pass the QueryParameters, and we will pass it the object that we created above, and then I will use the QueryParameters handling, and we will pass it the value merge. We have 2 options, merge or preserve. I will use the merge, so this will update the URL based on that. Now let's go back to the app.component.html. I will add my code again, filtered products is equal to empty array, and let's add our interface again. Okay, price. Okay, here I will specify the type product array, and now I will inject the activated route service. Okay, make sure to import the inject function as well. Now I will implement the ng onInit. Make sure to import the onInit class from the Angular/core. Now we will add the function ng onInit in our class, and now I will use this dot route dot query param map dot subscribe and pass it a callback function, and within that callback function we are getting the params as the parameter, and then here I will get the category, constant category, and here you can get the other filter values if you want to, and then after that you will fetch and filter the products based on the received parameters. So let me just show the value in the console for the category. Okay, and this is how you will filter it. This dot filtered products is equal to, so this is how you will filter the products. So in the real world project you will have the products variable as well that will have an array of the products like this, and whenever this category is changes in the URL, it will filter based on that value. Now let's quickly test it. So before testing it, I need to add the component app product filter, save it. Okay, so I got the filter. Let me remove everything from the URL for now. Right now nothing is in the URL, and now let's select the electronics. Nothing is happening. So let's go back to the filter component. So we have the function of apply filters, but we never called that functions. So here I also have registered the change event, and on the change event I have called the apply filters function. There is one more thing that we have to fix. We did not pass the value for any of these options. So let's pass the value electronics and clothing. Okay, now let's try it. Select the electronics and you will notice that the category electronics has been added in the URL. If you select a different one, it will be updated in the real time. And you will also notice that every time when you change the category, it appears in the console and it is being added in the console in the app.component. That is basically responsible of watching the category change in the URL, and this would be responsible to update the list of products based on the new category. So whenever you select a new category, it will immediately run the logic again within this callback function, and it will hit the backend REST API to get the products that are related to this category. Okay, let me be more practical here. Let's display these products in the HTML here. Okay, I have the products here in the URL, and let me see the possible categories. We have the phones, tablets and laptops. So let's add these categories here: laptops, phones and tablets. Okay, now whenever you will update it, the product list would be updated in the real time. So let's suppose I selected the laptop. Actually, in the app.component.html, we should have used the filtered products array instead of the products. Okay, so use the filtered products. Okay, now you can see it is showing only the products that has the laptop category. Let's select the phone and you will see that it has instantly updated the product list and showing only the products. If you select the tablets, then it will show the tablets only. So this is a very basic example, but in the real world example, you will be actually hitting the backend endpoint to get the products. But for the sake of the simplicity in this example, I am just hard coding the products here in the component and filtering from that. There are some other advanced things that you can do in your projects, like persisting filter state, like store the filter values in a service or local storage so they persist across navigation. Next one is combining data sources. You may fetch the product data from an API and then apply the filtering logic in your component, or you can do advanced filtering, like implement features like range sliders for price filtering, multiple section checkboxes, etc. If you are following along in a code editor, now's a great time to try implementing these steps yourself. Experiment with different filter options and see how the query parameters dynamically update. Before we wrap up, let's discuss some best practices and common pitfalls to avoid when working with query parameters in Angular. First one is security, where you have to sanitize the query parameters. Query parameters come from the user's browser, making them a potential vector for security attacks. So always sanitize query parameter values before using them in your application logic. Angular provides built-in mechanism for sanitization, so be sure to leverage them. Overuse of query parameters. While query parameters are handy, they are not always the best tool for every job. So consider their limitations. First limitation is that sensitive data. Avoid using query parameters for sensitive information like passwords or personal data. Second one is large amount of data. Query parameters can only hold a limited amount of data. For larger payloads, consider using route parameters or sending data in the request body. Next, we will quickly talk about some debugging tips. So here are some handy tips for troubleshooting common issues with query parameters. First one is check the URL. Double check the query parameters are being added to the URL correctly. Next, using the browser's developer tools. Inspect the network request to see the parameters being sent. Next, add console log statements to track the parameter values as they flow through your components. Next one is utilize Angular's DevTools extension to inspect the component tree and parameter values. There are some additional best practices. First one is keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate your query parameters. Use clear and concise naming conventions. Next one is document your code. Clearly document your query parameter usage so other developers and your future self can understand your intentions. By following these best practices, you will ensure that your query parameters are both powerful and secure. For those of you who are hungry more, let's go beyond the basics of query parameters in Angular. These advanced techniques will empower you to tackle even more complex scenarios. We are going to talk about the query param map versus query params. You might have noted that activated route provides two ways to access the query parameters. First one is query param map. This is a map-like object, specifically a param map that gives you methods like get all, and has to work with the parameters. It's great when you need precise control over the parameter retrieval. Next one is the query params. This is a simpler observable that directly emits an object containing all the query parameters as key value pairs. It's convenient when you want a quick and easy way to access all parameters at once. In general, use the query param map when you need fine-grained control or are working with complex parameter types. Use query params when you want a simpler approach and have straightforward parameter access needs. Next, we will talk about the custom query parameter deserialization. By default, Angular treats query parameter values as a string. But what if you have more complex parameter types like arrays or objects? You can customize the deserialization process to handle these cases. For example, if you have a parameter like colors is equal to red, blue, green, you can create a custom deserializer to convert it into an array of strings. So for example, let me simplify all of this. I'm going to get rid of all of this and let's remove this as well. Let me remove this part as well and this as well. So here we are using query param map.subscribe, but before that I will call the pipe function .pipe, and within that I will pass the rxjs operator map. Make sure to import the map from the rxjs and call the map function, and we have to pass it the callback function, and in that callback function we will be receiving the parameters, and then I will return an object, and in that object I will use the colors property and I will use params.get all colors. Okay, now when you will subscribe and if you target alert param.colors, you will get an array. So let me show you. Let me delete all of this because this is not working anymore. Okay, right now we don't have colors in the URL, that's why it is not working. Let me remove this filter as well. Okay, now here instead of that I will add the colors query string variable, and let's add few colors: red, blue, green. Press enter. We have this red, blue, green, but we are still not sure if this is an array. Okay, so to find out that, I will console it in the logs. So let's do that. Console.logs, save it. Console.log, save it. Now this did not work well, so I will just use the get colors, and also I have to split it with the comma like that, and that will convert it into an array. I can also pass it a default value as well, so in case if it doesn't work or it is not found, then it will return the empty array. Okay, now you will see that we have passed the string in this way in the URL, but in the subscription we got an array. And that wraps up our deep dive into query parameters in Angular. Hopefully you have gained a solid understanding of how to harness their power for building dynamic, user-friendly web applications. If you found this tutorial helpful, I would be super grateful if you could hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more Angular tips and tricks. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. For a more in-depth look at this topic, including written code, examples, and additional resources, be sure to visit my blog at ayaztech.com. You will find comprehensive tutorials and articles covering a wide range of Angular concepts. Thanks for joining me on this Angular adventure. Leave your questions and comments below. I would love to hear from you.